Your Honor, the Commonwealth calls Dr. Pat Ward.
Dr. Ward, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Pat Ward.
You may proceed.
Dr. Ward, good morning. I wanted to start off by just telling the jury briefly your qualifications. What is your current job title?
I'm the Chief Medical Examiner for Center County, Pennsylvania. I've had that position for the last 11 years.
And you've been a medical examiner for many years, right? How long have you been in this line of work?
Yes, ma'am. Prior to being in Center County for 26 years, I was a deputy. In the deputy pathologist in Philadelphia.
And where did you go to medical school?
I went to New York Medical College.
And what about undergrad? Where did you go to undergrad?
Undergrad, I did both undergraduate degree at Clintonville College, and then I also did a master's degree.
And you have teaching experience as well, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You're a professor here at the Temple.
I am, as well as at the University of Pennsylvania Medical School.
And are you familiar with analyzing gunshot wounds?
Yes, ma'am. It's something that I would be trained to do during my pathology and forensic pathology residencies and fellowships, and also it's something I've written on previously, the analysis of gunshot wounds.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to offer Dr. Ward as an expert in the field of gunshot wound analysis and coroner, as an expert coroner.
Defense?
Pathologist.
Is there an objection?
No, Your Honor, I still have a few questions if I may.
Oh, pleasure. Yes.
Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, sir.
You indicated that you are in fact a medical doctor, correct?
I am, sir. That is correct.
And just so that we can have some idea, approximately how many autopsies a year do you do?
It varies. Probably hundreds. When I was in Philadelphia, we would do several hundred per year. Center County, less than that. We do less than 100 per year, probably.
And you're board certified as well?
I'm actually double board certified, both in forensic pathology and also in toxicology.
I have no further questions, Your Honor. No objections.
Thank you. Dr. Ward will be received as an expert in the field of,
Forensic pathology.
thank you.
Dr. Ward, I'm gonna just show you, may I approach Your Honor?
You may.
Show you briefly what I have marked as Exhibit 7. Are you familiar with what I've just handed you?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that?
That's a copy of a portion of the report that I provided after my examination of the decedent.
And is that a true and accurate copy of the report that you prepared?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to move Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Defense?
You may, Your Honor, just so that we're on the same page.
Yeah, I don't think that Ms. Robinson showed the defense that.
You know what, Your Honor, my apologies, I might have missed a page.
Is it on page 12, Doctor? It says page
Yes,
12.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I started on the wrong page.
That's fine.
But I would like to move the complete copy from page 12 to 17 into evidence.
Exhibit 7, which is Dr. Ward's report, will be admitted into evidence.
Okay, great. And may I approach one more time, Your Honor?
You may.
Dr. Ward, I'm handing you a diagram. Can you tell the jury what that is?
Yes, ma'am. This is a diagram that shows the areas of the bullet wounds, the entrance wounds. There were no exit wounds in this particular case. Bullets went in, did not come out.
Is that a true and accurate copy of the diagram that you prepared in this case?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to move this diagram into evidence as Exhibit 8.
No objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Exhibit 8 will be received into evidence as a diagram,
Great.
and you may publish.
May I finish? Okay. Dr. Ward, I don't want to have you craning the whole time, but if you could just briefly look behind you, is that what I've just put up on the screen, is that the same diagram we were just discussing?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And who prepared this diagram?
I prepared the diagram during my external examination of the decedent.
And what does the diagram depict, generally?
It shows the body and the position of entrance wounds. A bullet, when it enters the body, it's called an entrance wound. If there's an exit wound, in this case there are none, they're going to look different. So these are entrance wounds where the bullet went into the body.
Okay. And how many times was the decedent in this case shot?
6 times.
I just want to walk through those gunshot wounds with you briefly, if I may. Starting from the first diagram, there are 2 gunshot wounds. And it appears that they are to the chest area, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. There are 2 entrance wounds in the chest.
Could you just explain the first 2 gunshots briefly to the jury?
Sure. When a bullet enters, it enters through the skin, creates a smaller hole. If there's an exit wound, it's a much larger hole. In this case, there were no exit wounds. So the bullet went in either side of the chest, would go through the pectoralis muscles, which are the muscles in our chest, and then will travel through different parts of the body. In this case of the first 2 gunshot wounds, they went through the lungs, creating injury to the lungs both from the projectile itself and the shock wave that's associated with the projectile, causing bleeding to occur in the lungs. The bullet also went through the large exiting artery called the aorta, damaging and injuring that, causing a hole in that, and then both of the bullets wound up in the heart and were found during my internal examination. When I opened the heart, I found the 2 bullets in the heart.
Thank you. And then in the middle of the diagram, I see two what you've told us are indications of bullet wounds to the arms. Can you tell the jury about those?
Yes, ma'am. Those were 1 in each bicep, which is the upper part of the arm. Those bullets went through the skin into the biceps and triceps muscles, and then both of them wound up in the supracondylar portion of the humerus. That is the part of the upper arm bone just above the elbow, and that's where I found both of those.
And were you able to determine a direction of entry for those gunshot wounds?
Well, the direction for the chest wounds was, I believe, right and left, backwards and downwards, and then for the arms were downwards. So they were going in a downward direction.
And what, if any, significance as far as the perspective or the perspective of the shooter can you determine from that direction?
Well, as far as the chest wounds are concerned, the decedent had to be facing the gun for those entrance wounds to occur. So the decedent is standing here, gun is here, and those 2 entrance wounds are centered with the decedent facing the gun. The arm wounds are the patient, either the decedent turned to one side or the other. That would be the other 2, the arm wounds.
And then the final picture, it looks like, can you tell us the location on the body of those final 2 gunshot wounds?
Yes, the final 2 wounds are from the back, so therefore the decedent would have to be facing away from the gun. So the decedent's back is facing the gun, and those bullets then entered the back. They went through, again, the skin, subcutaneous soft tissues, and muscle. And as far as these 2 back wounds are concerned, both of the bullets went through the spinal canal, meaning as soon as the bullet went through the spinal canal, that decedent would become immediately paralyzed and unable to move from the level of the mid-upper portion of the chest down through the legs, and the bullets ended up 1 in the spleen and 1 in the liver.
And were you able to determine a direction of those final 2 bullets?
Yes, those were downward as well.
And what, if any, can you determine from the downward direction about how the defendant would have been positioned with respect to the decedent when those gunshots were fired?
Well, in the first gunshot, the first gunshot to the back, the decedent would have immediately, if they were even standing, would immediately have fallen down because the decedent would have been immediately paralyzed. So therefore, one of the 2 gunshot of the back would be standing directly over. The other would be either above the decedent and pointing downward, or again facing downward on the ground.
Did you determine a cause of death in this case?
Yes, ma'am. Cause of death were 6 gunshot wounds. 3 of the first 2 in particular would have been fatal. All 4 would have been fatal. The arm wounds would not have been necessarily fatal.
And did you determine a manner of death in this case?
Homicide.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. The defense is cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, sir.
Now, on direct, you discussed the sequence of shots that the decedent in this particular case received. Let me ask you this question, sir. Can you determine the exact sequence that the body received each one of those wounds?
The exact sequence, well, based upon the witness testimony, which I also reviewed, the first gunshot wound was to the chest. After that gunshot wound to the chest, then the other wounds would be indeterminate as far as their sequence. However, as I said, the last 2 gunshot wounds would be through the spinal cord, and therefore the decedent would be immediately paralyzed. So the 2 chest wounds and the 2 arm wounds, the first chest wound would be first, the second chest wound and arm wounds would be after that, and the final 2 through the back would be the last 2.
In those final 2 wounds, you will agree that both of those wounds would be classified as incapacitating wounds, correct?
Yes, sir, they would be incapacitating in that the patient would have been paralyzed.
But the other wounds, he would have still been in a position where he could have moved.
That's correct, sir. The 2 gunshot wounds to the heart would be fatal wounds relatively quickly, but the patient would still be able to move, yes, sir.
And you say relatively quickly, but correct me if I'm wrong, that relatively quickly is contingent on a lot of different factors, including alcohol in the bloodstream.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, sir.
You said they would have been fatal relatively quickly.
Yes, sir,
My question,
within
sir,
less than a minute.
That's what you said.
Yes,
My
sir.
question, sir, is this. Are there additional factors that would have affected that, like whether or not there was alcohol in the blood, whether or not there was adrenaline or something along those lines, which would have continued to cause that person to move forward?
Yes, sir, that's correct. The patient was highly intoxicated, had a blood alcohol level of 0.28, which is well above the legal limit, actually 3 or 4 times above the legal limit. And certainly adrenaline is going to enable someone to continue to move for a particular distance after being shot. Yes, sir.
So my question, sir, is this. With those 4 wounds, the ones that are not incapacitating, he still could have been a threat.
Objection, Your Honor. This witness is being offered solely as a medical doctor. He's not here to classify what Mr. Miller was thinking or whether or not he posed
hold
a
on.
threat.
Mr. Lerman, repeat your question.
I
No
said that.
speaking objections. Objection, legal basis. Go ahead.
I said that with the first four wounds, the individual still could have been a threat. And I can rephrase it if Your Honor wishes.
Go ahead. Okay, I'll see the objection, rephrase your question.
Rephrasing. The person could still move.
The patient could still move after the first 4. That's correct, yes, sir.
The person could still hit someone.
I would be guessing as to what that patient would or would not do. If after being shot twice in the heart, I think that my first, this would be guessing, but common sense would say I'd want to get away as quickly as possible.
But that's common sense of you as an individual who's not intoxicated to a point of point 2.8 and not attempting to walk into someone's house and move. Like, you agree with that?
That's correct, sir. However, I'm shot in the chest once, I'm then shot in the chest a second time, and I'm turning to, based upon the review of the autopsy findings, shot in the arm in a downward direction, so I'm facing away, and then shot in the back twice, facing completely away.
That's correct. But my question to you from the very beginning was, a person who had received those types of wounds could still strike someone, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
He's a forensic pathologist, Your Honor. He's the person of all
Okay.
who would know the event. I'm sorry.
Repeat your question.
A
Mr.
person
Lerman.
who had received those types of wounds would still be capable of hitting or striking someone.
Your Honor, if I may, I don't want to give a speaking
Approach.
objection, but
Doctor, a person who had received the first 4 wounds that we're discussing, they would be physically capable of still striking someone.
same objection.
Okay, over the Commonwealth's objection, Dr. Ward, if you know the answer to the question, please answer the question.
In general terms, yes. In this case, the evidence shows that that would not be the case.
But in general terms.
In general terms, yes, sir.
Now, did you receive any clothing of the body?
The only clothing that the decedent was wearing was a pair of gym shorts.
Nothing else.
That's correct, sir.
Now, in your examination of the body, and in particularly gunshot wounds, were you able to determine the distance that the shooter was from?
The distance was indeterminate, however, it would be greater than 3 feet because there was no stippling or gunshot wound residue around any of the wounds themselves. Therefore, it has to be greater than 3 feet. Under 3 feet, there would be stippling or gunshot wound residue. When a bullet is fired, not only does the projectile come out of the gun, but gunpowder comes out as well. If you're 3 feet or less, then that gunpowder would be on the skin, and there was no such gunpowder in this case.
Now, Doctor, you'll agree that the size of the body is one of the factors. Well, sorry, I'll rephrase the question. That's a bad question. I'll withdraw. A bullet and the effect that a bullet has on the body will change based on how big that body is. You'll agree with that?
I don't really understand your question, sir. I'm sorry.
So if you have someone who is, say, 105 pounds and they get shot with a 9mm, the effect in terms of how they react, how their body reacts, how it turns, is a little bit different than if the person is, say, 350 pounds or 305 pounds.
No, sir, it's not about the person's size of the body. It's about where the projectiles go and where they're going. It's not about the size of the body. If the person is so big that the projectile never gets to a vital area, that would be a different story, but it really is the size of the decedent in this case is not relevant because of the position and where the projectiles went.
Now, in your autopsy report, you described the scene as robust. What do you mean?
Large-sized person. He was 6'2" and 305 pounds. Robust means large in size.
And that alcohol level of 2.8, the effects, I believe some of the effects listed are the anger, you agree?
0.28%, yes, sir. That would anger is anger, difficulty in decision-making, impulsive behavior, yes, sir.
Threatening behavior possible?
Possibly, yes, sir.
How about violence?
Depends on the person, but that's a possibility, yes, sir.
Now, we've already testified that you're a doctor, a medical doctor, correct?
I am, sir.
Are you familiar with the concept of the term triple bypass here?
Having a cardiac bypass, yes, sir.
And is that a serious surgery?
I think any surgery is serious, but any surgery on the heart certainly would be considered a serious surgery, yes, sir.
Life-threatening?
Life-threatening, it's actually it's the most commonly performed procedure pretty much nowadays in medicine, but any surgery on the heart certainly would be a potentially life-threatening surgery, yes, sir.
And individuals who receive this type of surgery, particularly elderly persons, do they have any limits on their lives subsequently?
Not necessarily. I'm someone I know who's in their 70s who had a bypass who climbs mountains, so it depends on the patient, sir.
It depends on the patient.
Yes, sir.
So there could be some that could, and others that maybe not.
That's correct, sir, yes.
One moment, John. Thank you, Doc.
You're very welcome, sir. Thank you.
Redirect?
Doctor, you said that during your investigation, you reviewed the statement of the defendant, Mr. Miller.
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
You were asking questions about whether or not the decedent would have been capable of striking Mr. Miller after the first 2 gunshot wounds, correct?
Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
remember that? Is there any evidence in this case that you've reviewed that the decedent actually did reach out and strike him?
Not that I found, ma'am, no.
If I may, I would ask if there was
Read
one.
across?
Yes, and there was one question I did forget.
Yes.
I believe on direct you testified that the manner of death was homicide.
Yes, sir.
Now, just so that the jury understands this concept, what is homicide?
Your
And
objection
I'm asking
beyond the
Lee
scope.
because this was a question I did.
No speaking objections,
Yes, sir.
and the court has given Mr. Goodman a little bit of leeway to ask that additional question he forgot to ask on cross-examination.
That is death caused by another.
So when you say homicide, in a situation where, say, there's a police justifiable shooting, that's still classified as homicide.
That would be a legal question for you to decide, sir. I'm for the judge to decide. Homicide is the cause of a death by another.
So again, the question that I asked, under those circumstances, whether it's illegal or legal, if a person's death is caused by the hands of another, it's always classified as homicide.
You guys mean about justifiable homicide,
No,
sir?
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking
I heard-
about the medical definition of a forensic pathologist. Are they all classified as homicides?
I believe I already answered that question, sir. The cause of a death by another is a homicide, yes, sir.
Thank you. Nothing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goodman. Is there a redirect?
No.
Is there anything else from this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Ward, you are excused. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Commonwealth, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth rests.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Commonwealth has rested its case, so at this time, we're gonna take our afternoon or lunch break. It's a little bit early. Actually, let me ask you, do you want us to keep going, let's say, for another hour and see where we end up, or do you wanna take your lunch break now? Who wants to keep going, raise your hand. Okay, would you like to take another 5-minute break before we keep going, or should we just keep going? All right, we're just gonna keep going, all right. Actually, I do need the jurors to step out just for a few minutes to handle some legal issues with the attorneys. So why don't you take a 5 to 10 minute break, and let's meet back in here at 5 after 11.